So if we go back to the 1990s, there was this moment where one of the biggest, most iconic companies in the world basically started paying people to take their products.
Right. General Motors.
Yeah, exactly. It was this massive industry-shaking strategy. And I mean, at first, it worked beautifully. Sales went up, inventory moved out the door, the market responded.
Oh, absolutely. They moved the metal, as they say.
Right. But beneath the surface, that same wildly successful strategy was acting like a slow-acting poison. It was almost destroying the entire organization from the inside out.
Yeah, because they were facing this sudden, really intense onslaught of competition from foreign automakers, specifically, Toyota and Honda.
And they felt cornered.
Completely cornered. They needed to move cars immediately. So they started offering these massive rebates, anywhere from $500 to like $7,000 cash back.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. And as you said, it worked in the short term. But by 2007, the structural rot of that strategy became just impossible to ignore.
Because they were losing money, right?
In massive amounts.
Yeah.
General Motors was losing $729 on every single vehicle they sold.
Yeah.
I mean, they had trained an entire generation of buyers to become basically cashback junkies.
Wow. Cashback junkies. Welcome to a special expert-led discussion for the Decode Deep Dive channel. Today, we're looking at the modern business landscape.
Which is, let's be honest, pretty exhausting.
Oh, totally. If you are navigating it right now, whether you're leading a massive corporate division, launching a startup, or just, managing your own career, it often feels incredibly stressful.
There's this suffocating stress built right into how we work today.
Yeah, and it stems from a phenomenon we might call the commodity trap. It's this reality where almost every organization relies on these exhausting manipulations.
Dropping prices, running endless promotions, leveraging fear, all of it.
Exactly. And they do this for one simple reason, which is honestly kind of mind-blowing. They have absolutely no idea why their customers are actually their customers.
That is the core of it. It's a systemic vulnerability. When an organization, or even just an individual leader, lacks a clear sense of purpose, they are instantly forced to compete on the margins.
They have to compete on novelty.
Right. And they end up treating their products, their services, and tragically, their own employees like disposable commodities. It just becomes this race to the bottom.
So today we are deconstructing the principles from Simon Sinek's deeply transformative book, Start With Why.
Such an important book.
It really is. We're going to look at the actual biology of human decision-making, explore this framework he calls the golden circle, and uncover the hidden danger of success.
Right, a phenomenon known as the split.
Yeah. But to really grasp the alternative, I feel like we have to look closely at the water we are all currently swimming in.
The baseline reality of the market.
Exactly. The illusion of choice. Because practically every product or service out there can be bought from someone else for roughly the same price, the same quality, and, the exact same features.
Yeah, if a company develops a first-mover advantage today, it vanishes in a matter of months. Somebody copies it.
Right. So to influence human behavior in this totally crowded space, you really only have two levers you can pull. You can manipulate it or you can inspire it.
We should probably define our terms here, because manipulation, it often carries this heavy moral judgment.
Like it's inherently evil.
Right. But in a business context, it's really just a tactical mechanism. It's a highly effective, incredibly common way to drive a transaction.
We use manipulations in our personal lives constantly.
Exactly. I mean, offering a child a dessert if they finish their vegetables, that is a manipulation.
A very effective one.
True. But in commerce, these take the form of carrots and sticks. And the most ubiquitous carrot, which, funny enough, can quickly turn into a stick for the company wielding it, is price.
Which brings us right back to the General Motors situation. Dropping the price is like giving a sales team a shot of adrenaline.
It feels great in the moment.
The short-term gain is undeniable. But I imagine the physiological dependency sets in quickly. Once you drop the price, how do you ever convince the market to pay a premium again?
You rarely can.
Yeah.
GM realized the model was mathematically unsustainable, right? So they attempted to pull back the cashback offers.
And what happened?
Predictably, sales plummeted. They had broken the value proposition of their own product. The consumer no longer saw a $30,000 car.
They saw a car that was only worth buying if they got $5,000 back in the trunk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It built this expectation that full price was just for suckers. Price manipulations destroy loyalty because they train the buyer to always look for the next discount.
Whether it comes from you or your competitor, they don't care.
They really don't.
And it isn't just price. Promotions function the exact same way, just, with better packaging. The 2-for-1 deal or the free accessory with purchase.
Right.
But diving into the source material, the mechanics behind the rebate industry are particularly dark. There is a deeply cynical calculation happening behind the scenes in retail.
Oh, the rebate industry is fascinatingly cynical. They rely heavily on two specific metrics.
Okay.
Breakage and slippage.
Okay, break those down for us.
So breakage refers to the percentage of customers who buy a product specifically because of a rebate offer, but then they completely fail to complete the required steps to claim it.
Because it's hard.
Right. Retailers intentionally introduce friction. They require you to cut out a tiny little barcode, fill out this detailed, ridiculous form, and mail it before a really strict deadline.
They are basically monetizing human disorganization.
That is exactly what they're doing. And then slippage is the second part of that trap.
What about slippage?
That happens when the company actually issues the rebate check, but the customer loses it, or forgets to cash it, or just lets it expire.
It's essentially a tax on being busy.
Precisely.
The one that blew my mind in the research was Samsung. In the early 2000s, they ran a promotion offering rebates up to $150 on various electronics.
I remember this case.
Yeah, and the fine print stated the rebate was limited to 1 per address, which, sounds completely standard.
Right. To prevent businesses from claiming hundreds of them.
Exactly. Until you look at how it played out in reality. It effectively disqualified anyone living in an apartment building if another resident in a completely different unit happened to apply first.
Wow.
Over 4,000 customers were denied their rebates. The New York Attorney General actually had to step in, and Samsung was ordered to pay $200,000 in claims.
Because that isn't just a marketing tactic.
No, that is weaponized fine print.
And it reveals the fundamentally transactional nature of the strategy, right?
Yeah.
Samsung wasn't trying to build a lasting relationship with apartment dwellers.
Obviously not.
They were just trying to move inventory while minimizing financial exposure. And while promotions and price are the carrots, fear is the ultimate stick.
Fear is so powerful.
It is arguably the most powerful manipulator we have because it completely bypasses rational thought and taps directly into our biological drive to survive.
It's the old corporate proverb, right? No one ever got fired for hiring IBM.
Exactly. And that has absolutely nothing to do with IBM having the objectively best product.
It's pure self-preservation. A procurement officer will happily buy an inferior, overly expensive software package just because the brand is a known entity.
Right, because they are terrified that if they take a risk on a brilliant unknown startup and it fails, their head is on the chopping block.
Yeah, the psychology of loss aversion is incredibly potent. We see it in public service announcements, too.
Like the classic, "This is your brain on drugs" campaign with the egg frying in a pan.
Yes. Or businesses selling home security systems by showing a masked intruder breaking a window. It is the proverbial gun to the head.
And it forces an immediate action. But the problem is, it leaves a lingering resentment. No one feels a deep, loving loyalty to the company that terrified them into a purchase.
That's a great point. And we see the mirror image of fear and aspirational messaging, too.
How so?
Well, instead of running from a nightmare, you are running toward a dream. Like 6 steps to a happier life or get the body you've always wanted.
Oh, right.
But the underlying mechanic feels identical. It requires an immense amount of discipline from the buyer to maintain that behavior. It's why gym memberships predictably spike every January.
The New Year's resolution crowd.
Exactly. People aspire to be healthier. The gym leverages that aspiration to secure an annual contract. But the motivation is external.
Right. And by March, the majority of those new members aren't showing up anymore.
Because the aspiration wasn't tied to an internal belief system. It was just a fleeting desire.
Which leads us to perhaps the most insidious manipulation of all, because it frequently masquerades as progress. And that is novelty.
Companies constantly confuse novelty with true innovation.
Constantly.
The Motorola RAZR is the perfect case study here. I mean, I remember when that phone came out, everyone had to have one. It felt like the future.
It did. It utilized aircraft-grade aluminum, featured a chemically etched keypad, and was just incredibly thin.
It was so cool.
In 2004, Motorola's CEO Ed Zander heralded it as a revolutionary innovation. They sold over 50 million units.
It was a cultural phenomenon.
But a few years later, Zander was forced out. The company's stock had plummeted, and competitors had simply copied the form factor. The RAZR was a brilliant novelty.
It was shiny and new, but it didn't fundamentally alter the ecosystem of industry.
Exactly. Compare that to the iPhone. When Apple launched it, yes, removing the physical keyboard was a novel feature. But the actual innovation wasn't the glass screen.
Oh, was it?
The innovation was Apple going to the service providers, like AT&T, and dictating what the phone would do, rather than letting the carrier dictate the features to the manufacturer.
Oh, wow. They inverted the power dynamic of the entire telecom industry.
Precisely. True innovation alters how society functions. Novelty just adds a new coat of paint.
That is such a crucial distinction, and we see the trap of novelty vividly in the consumer goods aisle, too. Look at toothpaste.
Toothpaste is the best example.
In the 1970s, Colgate offered two types of toothpaste. As competition intensified, they needed a way to stand out, so they added fluoride.
Then they introduced a whitening formula.
Then tartar control. Then sparkles for kids. Then stripes.
Yeah.
Today, if you look at their product line, they have dozens of variations.
It has become so overwhelmingly complex that they actually had to build a diagnostic tool on their website just to help consumers figure out which toothpaste to buy.
That is insane. When a company has to engineer a digital compass to help you navigate their own product line, the manipulation has reached its absolute limit.
It really has.
I want to pause on that, though, because it highlights the massive hidden cost of running a business this way. These manipulations, price drops, rebates, fear tactics, endless novel features, they drive transactions.
But they absolutely destroy loyalty.
Right, and we need to draw a hard line between repeat business and true loyalty. Repeat business just means someone bought from you more than once.
Probably because you were the cheapest or most convenient option on that specific day.
Exactly. Loyalty is entirely different. Loyalty is when a customer is willing to suffer an inconvenience or turn down a better price from a competitor just to continue doing business with you.
The distinction is vital, and the book details a fascinating example regarding a company called mygoldenvelope.com.
Oh, the cash for gold guys.
Right. The founders, Douglas Fairstein and Michael Moran, entered the cash for gold industry with a vision to be the Tiffany's of their space.
They wanted to be high-end.
Exactly. They poured resources into customer service, creating a beautiful brand experience, really trying to cultivate deep relationships. But after analyzing the data, they discovered a glaring truth.
Which was?
The overwhelming majority of their customers only did business with them exactly one time.
Well, yeah, because you only have so much unwanted gold jewelry in your attic.
Exactly. They were trying to build a deep relational model for an industry that is inherently transactional.
It's like losing your dog and putting up reward posters. You don't want a lifelong friendship with the person who finds your dog.
No, you just want the transaction of getting your dog back in exchange for the money.
Right. Manipulations are perfectly fine if your entire business model relies on single, disconnected transactions. But if you need loyalty to survive, manipulations will slowly kill you.
And the toll isn't just financial. Peter Wybrow, who is a psychiatrist and author of American Mania, argues that our reliance on these short-term, manipulation-driven cycles is having a devastating physiological impact.
On people, you mean?
Yes, the constant peer pressure, the fear-based marketing, the artificial urgency, it literally overloads the reward circuits in the human brain.
Wow.
We're seeing record levels of ulcers, clinical depression, anxiety disorders, and high blood pressure, all heavily correlated with the stress of navigating this hyper-competitive transactional landscape.
So running an organization on manipulations is exactly like fueling your body on cheap sugar.
That's a perfect analogy.
You eat a candy bar, and you get an immediate massive spike in energy. The sales team hits their quarterly target, everyone celebrates, but the crash is biologically inevitable.
And when you crash, what do?
You reach for more sugar, you run another promotion, you drop the price again. Over time, that constant cycle of spiking and crashing destroys the system's immune system.
That metabolic breakdown is precisely what led to the economic crisis of 2008.
Really? How so?
We had built an entire financial system on transactional manipulations. We incentivized brokers with massive bonuses for short-term gains, ignoring long-term stability.
Oh, the subprime loans.
Exactly. There was a free flow of subprime loans driven by the novelty of complex financial instruments. There was zero loyalty, zero consideration for the structural integrity of the whole. It was a massive systemic sugar crash.
So if manipulations are the toxic sugar of the business world, we have to explore the protein. What is the sustainable, healthy alternative?
Right. How do we shift from the outside in to the inside out?
Yes, how do we move away from forcing transactions and shift toward genuine inspiration?
Well, the framework for that shift is called the Golden Circle. It's a deceptively simple concept, mathematically inspired by the golden ratio, the formula for proportion and order found throughout the natural world. Okay. The golden circle consists of three concentric rings. The outermost, largest ring represents what? Every single company and every single professional on the planet knows what they do.
These are the products you sell, the services you offer, the specific tasks you perform daily.
Exactly. The middle ring is how. Some companies know how they do what they do.
This is usually articulated as a differentiating value proposition, right? Or
Yeah.
a proprietary process.
Right. It's the explanation of what makes your product better or faster than the competition.
Okay, so we have what on the outside, how in the middle.
But the innermost circle, the absolute core of the framework, is WHY. Very few organizations or individuals can clearly articulate WHY they do what they do.
And to be absolutely clear here, making money is not a WHY.
Thank you, yes. Making money is a result of your actions. By WHY, we mean your defining purpose, your cause, your core belief.
Why does your organization exist? Why did you get out of bed this morning?
And crucially, why should anyone else care?
The problem is that almost all communication happens from the outside in. We go from the clearest, most tangible thing to the fuzziest thing.
We tell people what we do, we explain how we do it, and then we expect them to change their behavior and buy from us.
Let's use Apple as the quintessential example here. If Apple were a standard outside-in company, their marketing pitch would sound like this. We make great computers, they're beautifully designed, simple to use, and incredibly user-friendly. Want to buy one?
I mean, it's a perfectly rational argument. It lists the features and benefits, but it doesn't inspire anything. It sounds like every other computer company.
Right. Now observe how Apple actually communicates. They start from the inside of the circle and work their way out. They start with WHY.
Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently.
The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one?
The psychological shift there is staggering.
It really is. You didn't rely on a celebrity endorsement. You didn't offer a discount. You didn't use fear. You simply reversed the order of information.
Because people do not buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The physical computer just serves as the tangible, physical proof of the belief you hold.
This is where we transition from business theory into hard science, which I love. The golden circle isn't just a clever way to write a marketing brochure.
Not at all. It maps perfectly to the biological architecture of the human brain.
So if you examine a top-down cross-section of our brain, the levels of the golden circle correspond exactly to the evolutionary development of the mind.
Yes. The newest area of the brain, evolutionary speaking, is our Homo sapien brain, the neocortex. That corresponds directly to the what level of the circle.
And the neocortex is responsible for all of our rational thought, our analytical processing, and crucially, it is the center for language.
It loves facts, figures, and features.
But as you move deeper into the brain,
You reach the middle sections, which comprise the limbic system. The limbic brain corresponds directly to the HRW and the WHY.
and what does the limbic system do?
This older part of the brain is the emotional center. It is responsible for all of our feelings, trust, loyalty, safety. Furthermore, the limbic system controls all human behavior and all of our decision-making.
Wait, all of it?
Yes, but here is the biological catch that confounds every marketer on Earth. The limbic brain has absolutely zero capacity for language.
That is just wild. Why did we evolve that way? It seems like a massive design flaw to have the decision-making center completely disconnected from our ability to speak.
It seems like it, right?
Yeah.
But it is actually a brilliant survival mechanism. Language is slow. Processing abstract thought and linguistic concepts requires massive cognitive energy.
Okay, that makes sense.
In early human history, if you encountered a rustling in the bushes or a stranger from another tribe, you couldn't afford to sit down and analytically process the features and benefits of the situation.
You'd get eaten by a tiger while making a pros and cons list.
Exactly. You needed an immediate, visceral gut reaction. Trust or fear. Fight or flight. The limbic system evolved to process environmental data and trigger an immediate behavioral response without the delay of language.
That explains so much about the human experience. It's exactly why it is so incredibly difficult to put our deepest feelings into words.
Oh, perfectly.
Like if someone asks you why you love your spouse, your neocortex scrambles to find words for a decision made by your limbic system.
So you list the whats. You say she's smart, she's funny, she's kind.
But rationally, there are millions of smart, funny, kind people in the world, and you don't want to marry them.
The rational explanation isn't the real reason.
The real reason is how that person makes you feel. But because the feeling part of the brain doesn't possess vocabulary, we resort to cliches. We say things like, she completes me.
Which makes zero logical sense, but perfectly captures the limbic reality.
Right. And this biological disconnect exposes the fundamental flaw in traditional market research.
Focus groups are notoriously flawed.
When a company gathers a focus group and asks them why they chose product A over product B, they are asking the neocortex to explain a limbic decision.
And the focus group will always give a rational explanation. They will cite the price or a specific feature because that is all the language center can articulate.
But the neocortex didn't actually make the purchase, the limbic brain did.
This is the exact phenomenon Henry Ford was referring to with his famous quote, "If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse."
Because people couldn't conceptualize the automobile. They were rationalizing their desires based entirely on the tangible whats they already understood.
Precisely. And this brings immense clarity to the concept of a gut decision. We talk about it all the time.
But your stomach obviously isn't deciding anything.
No, a gut decision is quite literally a decision being made by the limbic brain. It feels deeply correct, but you cannot immediately articulate why.
The neuroscientist Richard Restack explores this beautifully in his book, The Naked Brain.
Yes, great reference.
He points out that when humans are forced to make decisions using only the rational neocortical part of their brain, they tend to overthink.
The decisions take significantly longer to process, and historically they end up being of lower quality.
However, decisions driven by the limbic brain, those instinctual gut decisions, are processed much faster and are frequently of much higher quality.
It is the biological reason why you are always told to trust your first instinct on a multiple choice exam.
Okay, let me push back on this for a second because I want to make sure I fully grasp the implication.
Go for it.
If the limbic brain controls our decisions but has no language, is that the sole reason someone chooses to buy a Ferrari instead of a Honda Odyssey?
What do you mean?
Let's be brutally honest. For 99% of people, the Honda Odyssey is rationally, objectively the better vehicle. It has sliding doors, cup holders, incredible gas mileage, and you can fit your whole family in it.
The great what?
Exactly. The Ferrari is impractical, wildly expensive, and constantly needs maintenance. But the Ferrari speaks to our limbic identity. Are we just using the what? The horsepower, the leather stitching, to rationalize the WHY, how the car makes us feel about our own status?
That is exactly the mechanism at play. If human beings were purely rational creatures driven only by the neocortex, no one would ever buy a Mac computer.
Really?
Historically, they have been more expensive than PCs, and for a long time, they had significantly less software compatibility. By every rational metric, it was a worse deal.
But people lined up around the block for them.
Exactly, and no one would ever wait 6 months and pay a premium for a custom Harley-Davidson motorcycle when they could buy a reliable Yamaha today.
But they do.
Because the product itself serves as a symbol of the buyer's own identity. When someone opens a MacBook in a crowded coffee shop, that glowing Apple logo tells everyone in the room something specific about who that person is and what they believe.
Nobody cares when you open an HP laptop.
Right. HP has a fuzzy, undefined WHY, so their products have zero symbolic value to their users.
That perfectly explains the massive failure Dell experienced when they tried to expand into MP3 players and PDAs in the early 2000s.
Oh, the Dell DJ.
Yeah. Dell defined themselves entirely by what they did. We make reliable, affordable computers. So when they suddenly introduced a small handheld music player, the consumer's limbic brain violently rejected it.
It just didn't feel right.
The neocortex could see it was a perfectly functional MP3 player, but it lacked authenticity. Contrast that with Apple. Apple defined themselves by WHY, they exist. We challenge the status quo.
So because we understood their core belief, it made total sense to us when they released a computer, an MP3 player, a phone, or a watch.
The what was flexible because the WHY was concrete.
The power of starting with WHY is profound. However, knowing your WHY is merely the first step of the journey. A WHY is just a belief.
In a vacuum, it accomplishes nothing.
Exactly. It must be paired with the rigorous discipline required to bring it into the physical world. This requires a delicate balance of 3 elements.
The clarity of WHY, the discipline of HHW, and the consistency of what.
This is where the rubber meets the road. You can't just hire a consultant to write a beautiful mission statement, slap it on a poster in the break room, and expect your company to transform.
You need the discipline of HOW.
The HOWs are the guiding principles. They are your core values, your systems, your hiring practices, and your corporate culture. You must have the fierce discipline to hold the entire organization accountable to those principles, even when it is financially inconvenient.
And the whats are the physical results, the products you ship, the marketing campaigns you run, the way your customer service reps answer the phone.
Right. Everything you say and do in the physical world must consistently prove the belief you hold in the center of the circle.
Because we live in a tangible world. We cannot see a belief. We can only see the results of that belief. If you aren't perfectly consistent, the market will have no idea what you stand for.
This cuts right to the heart of the corporate obsession with authenticity. I see companies constantly trying to figure out how to appear more authentic.
They actually run focus groups to ask their customers, what do we need to say to you for you to believe we are authentic?
It's absurd. You cannot ask someone how to be authentic.
Authenticity is not a marketing strategy. It is a state of alignment.
Authenticity only exists when your golden circle is in perfect balance. It means everything you say and do as an organization is something you actually believe.
Apple's products are perceived as authentic because we understand their WHY, and their products consistently serve as proof of that belief.
While Dell's MP3 players felt inauthentic because there was no underlying belief driving their creation, other than a desire to capitalize on a growing market segment.
The source material has this brilliant, vivid metaphor to explain how you actually operationalize this alignment. It's called the celery test.
I love the celery test.
Imagine you are at a networking event or a dinner party, and you are surrounded by highly successful people giving you business advice.
Okay.
One person pulls you aside and says, you really need to introduce M&Ms into your organization. It's the secret to growth. Another person tells you, no, Oreos are the future. Someone else insists, celery is what you need. And a fourth person says, you have to leverage rice milk.
And all of this advice comes from smart, successful people. So what do? You go to the supermarket and you buy all of it.
You buy the M&Ms, the Oreos, the celery, and the rice milk.
You have spent a tremendous amount of time and a huge amount of capital. But more importantly, when you stand in the checkout line and the people around you look at your basket, they have absolutely no clue what you believe.
You are just a person holding a random contradictory assortment of goods.
But let's run the scenario again, this time starting with WHY. Before you ever walk into the supermarket, you clearly define your purpose. Let's say your WHY is, I believe in always doing things that are healthy for my body.
Okay.
You go to the same party, you talk to the same successful people, and you get the exact same advice. But now you have a filter. When you walk into the store, you ignore the M&Ms and the Oreos, and you only put the celery and the rice milk in your basket.
The advice to buy M&Ms wasn't inherently bad advice. It just wasn't the right advice for you.
Exactly. By filtering your decisions through your WHY, you save time, you save money, and most importantly, your belief becomes visible.
Anyone standing near you in that checkout line can look at your basket of celery and rice milk and instantly understand, oh, this person deeply values their health.
Your what is perfectly proving your WHY.
This solves the massive problem of scale for a growing company. When the WHY is that explicitly clear, you don't need the founder or the CEO micromanaging every decision.
No. A mid-level manager in a regional office can make a decision as accurately as the founder because the filter is universally understood.
They just ask themselves, is this new initiative celery or is it an Oreo?
That is the ultimate definition of scale. Now, we have to acknowledge that the real world is messy and pragmatic. Sometimes an organization has to make a short-term, survival-based decision.
You might need to meet payroll, so you decide to take on a client that doesn't align with your values.
Right, you choose to buy a piece of chocolate cake. That happens. But when you have a clear WHY, you recognize that the chocolate cake is a deviation.
You know it is a short-term sugar rush.
You acknowledge that your golden circle is temporarily out of balance, and you know you will have to work twice as hard to get back on track.
The danger arises when a company buys chocolate cake over and over again without realizing it. Eventually, their basket is just junk food, and the market no longer trusts them.
It is exactly like the process of dating.
Oh, how so?
You can absolutely use manipulations on a first date. You can take them to an incredibly extensive restaurant, drop names of powerful people you know, promise them the world, and you might successfully close the deal and get them to like you that night.
But if your goal is a second date or a 10-year marriage, manipulations are useless.
You need authenticity. You can't sit across the table on a third date and just list your rational features and benefits. I have a great salary, I own a reliable car, I have all my teeth, therefore you should love me.
That is a neocortex argument. It does not build a trusting, lasting relationship.
The biological process is identical whether you're choosing a spouse or a vendor. When we make a decision based purely on rational metrics, the highest level of confidence we can muster is, I think this is the right decision.
That is the language of the neocortex.
Right. When we make a gut decision driven by the limbic brain, the confidence level rises to, this feels right, even if we can't explain it.
But when a person or an organization achieves true alignment when they know their WHY, and it perfectly matches their HIW and their what, they achieve the ultimate state of confidence.
I know it is right.
So once an organization has a balanced basket of celery and rice milk, how do they actually scale that belief? How do you move from having a loyal core group of believers to actually tipping an entire market and creating a mass movement?
This requires us to shift our lens from individual biology to mass sociology.
Let's do it.
In 1962, a sociologist named Everett M. Rogers published a theory on how new ideas spread through society. Years later, Jeffrey Moore expanded on this significantly in his seminal book, Crossing the Chasm.
The concept is known as the Law of Diffusion of innovations, and it is visually represented by a standard bell curve.
Right. The curve divides the population into 5 distinct segments based on their risk tolerance and adoption habits. At the far left, you have the innovators. They make up roughly 2.5% of the population.
These are the people who aggressively pursue new ideas, often just for the thrill of being first.
Exactly. Right next to them are the early adopters, making up about 13.5%. They aren't inventing the ideas, but they are incredibly quick to recognize the potential of something new.
They are willing to take financial risks or suffer massive inconveniences just to get their hands on a product that aligns with their vision of the future.
Moving to the right, we hit the massive, practical-minded middle of the curve. You have the early majority at 34% and the late majority at another 34%.
And finally, at the far right tail of the curve, you have the laggards, making up the last 16%.
The laggards are the people who only buy touch-tone phones because the telecom industry literally stopped manufacturing rotary phones. They adopt out of necessity, not desire.
The critical insight from this model revolves around the psychology of that massive middle section. The early and late majority are inherently cynical and practical.
They want guarantees.
And the fundamental rule of the law of diffusion is that the early majority will not try something new until someone else has tried it first. They demand social proof.
This creates a massive strategic hurdle. If an organization wants to achieve mass market success, they cannot aim their marketing directly at the middle of the bell curve. The middle won't listen.
You have to penetrate the left side of the curve first, the innovators and the early adopters.
You have to achieve a critical mass, a tipping point of between 15 and 18% market penetration. Once you capture the loyalty of the left side, the people who inherently believe what you believe, they will champion your cause.
They become your megaphone, carrying the idea across the chasm and validating it for the practical majority.
The contrast between the failure of TiVo and the success of Martin Luther King Jr. illustrates this perfectly. Let's look at TiVo first.
Oh man, TiVo.
In the late 90s, TiVo introduced a technology that fundamentally revolutionized how humanity consumes television. They had incredible venture funding, massive public relations, and a highly polished product.
But they aimed their entire marketing apparatus directly at the massive middle of the bell curve.
They tried to appeal to the practical majority by exhaustively explaining what the product did. You could pause live TV, you can skip commercials, you can record shows while watching other shows.
And the practical majority responded the exact way they always respond to disruptive technology that they haven't seen validated by their peers. They said, I don't need it, I don't understand it, and honestly, you are scaring me.
TiVo completely ignored the law of diffusion. They didn't start with WHY. Imagine if they had pointed their messaging at the innovators and early adopters on the left side of the curve.
What if their pitch had been, if you are the kind of person who demands total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you.
The early adopters would have scrambled to buy it, not for the features, but because the product served as tangible proof of their own belief in autonomy and control.
Now, compare that technological failure to a profound sociological success. In August of 1963, 250,000 people descended on the Mall in Washington, D.C. to hear Martin Luther King Jr. speak.
When you actually pause and think about the logistics of that, it is mind-bending.
There was no internet, there were no mass email blasts, there was no website you could check to confirm the date and time. How on earth do you get 250,000 people to show up on the right day, at the right time, in the right city?
You achieve that by broadcasting a perfectly clear WHY. Dr. King did not travel a country dictating what specific legislative changes had to occur in America. He didn't give a speech titled, "I have a comprehensive 10-point plan for civil rights."
He gave the "I have a dream" speech.
He articulated a profound, unifying belief about the future. And the innovators and early adopters of the civil rights movement, the people who already shared that exact belief, took his message and amplified it through their own local networks.
The people who showed up in Washington didn't necessarily do it for Dr. King. They did it for themselves. Standing on that mall was a physical manifestation of their own internal beliefs.
And we are reporting on this purely as an incredible example of diffusion and communication from the text, by the way.
Yes, exactly. This really dismantles a major myth I hear in business all the time. Companies will run a massive, incredibly expensive advertising campaign aimed at the general public. They throw all this spaghetti at the wall of the majority and they boast about getting a 10% conversion rate.
They think 10% is a huge win.
But mathematically, 10% does not reach the 15 to 18% tipping point. So by throwing money at the middle of the curve, they're actually employing a wildly inefficient, incredibly expensive strategy.
They are trying to lower the risk tolerance of the cynics through price drops and manipulations, rather than just securing 10% of the highly loyal early adopters who will naturally tip the scale for free.
That is the tragedy of chasing the middle. You are constantly forced to manipulate them, and the second a competitor offers a slightly cheaper price, they will abandon you.
You must focus your energy on the left side of the curve. Those are the people who will willingly stand in the freezing rain for 6 hours to buy a new iPhone.
They aren't doing it because the phone is rationally superior. They are doing it because being the first to own it is tangible proof of their own identity and their own WHY.
But this brings us to a terrifying paradox. What happens when you do everything right?
Yeah, what if you win?
You start with WHY, you attract the early adopters, you tip the scale, the majority follows, and you become a billion-dollar juggernaut. Suddenly you have thousands of employees and millions of customers.
This massive success is actually where organizations are most vulnerable. It leads to a phenomenon known as the split.
To understand how companies lose their soul as they grow, we have to change how we visualize the golden circle. We need to pull it up from a flat, two-dimensional target into a three-dimensional cone.
Imagine a megaphone sitting on a desk, pointing upward.
Okay, I'm visualizing a cone.
At the very top, the narrowest point, sits the WHY. In the context of an organization, that point represents the leader, the founder, or the CEO. The next level down, expanding outward, is the HOW. These are your senior executives. They are the operators who are inspired by the leader's vision and know how to build the actual infrastructure to bring it to life.
And the wide, expansive base of the cone is the what. This encompasses all the products, the services, and the vast majority of the employees who interact directly with the chaotic marketplace outside the cone.
For a megaphone to project a clear message, there must be absolute clarity at the top. The leader's primary job is not to focus outward on the marketplace. Their job is to personify the WHY.
And ensure that the HOW types immediately beneath them understand it on a cellular level. The HOW types are the brilliant realists who build the systems.
Think of Steve Jobs. He was the visionary WHY, but he needed Steve Wozniak, the ultimate HOW-type engineer, to actually make the Apple computer function.
Bill Gates had this grand vision of a PC on every desk to empower humanity. But Paul Allen was the one who built the company's foundation. Herb Kelleher preached the gospel of freedom at Southwest Airlines, but it was Roland King who came up with the operational idea.
You absolutely need both. The visionary architect needs the structural engineer. But here is where the tragedy of success occurs.
As a company scales, it naturally begins to track its progress by measuring the what. It's easy to measure revenue, market share, and stock price.
So, on a chart, the line representing the what grows steadily upward.
But the WHY, the clarity of the founding purpose, is intangible. It cannot be measured on a spreadsheet. It must be actively managed through culture. When it is neglected, the WHY line stays completely flat, while the what line skyrockets.
The growing gap between those two lines is called the split.
When an organization goes through the split, the sheer volume of their megaphone becomes deafening because of their market share and advertising budget. but the message coming out of the megaphone becomes totally distorted and fuzzy.
The employees are no longer inspired by a cause greater than themselves. They're just showing up to manage systems, hit financial metrics, and collect a paycheck.
The case studies on this are fascinating and a little heartbreaking. Let's look at Walmart. Most people today associate Walmart purely with cheap prices and massive scale.
But Sam Walton didn't build that empire on cheap prices. He built it on a profound WHY of serving people, specifically the average, hardworking American in rural communities.
He drove an old pickup truck. He famously got his hair cut at the local barber shop. He built his stores in small towns so rural families wouldn't have to spend a whole day traveling to a major city to get necessities.
The cheap prices were merely the how W. They were the mechanism he used to bring his cause of serving people to life.
But after Walton passed away, the company slowly forgot his WHY. They suffered a massive split. The leadership confused WHY the company existed to serve the community with how they did business offering low prices.
Efficiency and profit margins became their sole obsession. They traded an inspiring, community-driven cause for a cold manipulation.
And the result of that split has been a long history of ruthless cost-cutting, scandals involving the mistreatment of their workforce, and a complete evaporation of the genuine community love that Sam Walton had spent his life cultivating.
You can see the stark contrast when you look at Costco. Jim Sinegal, Costco's co-founder, operated with almost the exact same WHY as Sam Walton. He believed deeply in taking care of the working class, particularly his own employees.
Wall Street analysts constantly criticized Senegal for paying his floor workers significantly above minimum wage and offering excellent benefits, arguing he was failing to squeeze margins for the shareholders.
But Sinegal trusted his limbic gut. He knew that exploiting his people would violate his WHY, and today, the trust is palpable.
When Walmart announces a new green initiative, the public is deeply skeptical. They assume it's a PR stunt or a tax dodge. But when Costco announces a similar initiative, people applaud because Costco's WHY has remained crystal clear. We inherently trust them.
Microsoft provides another fascinating, almost tragic example of the split. Bill Gates was driven by a WHY of empowering people to achieve their greatest potential. Software was simply the tangible tool he utilized to democratize computing power.
Under his visionary leadership, Microsoft literally changed the world. But when Gates stepped down as CEO and handed the reins to Steve Ballmer, Microsoft's WHY went incredibly fuzzy.
Ballmer is, by all accounts, a brilliantly smart, highly capable H&W type executive. He is a master of operations.
But he didn't naturally personify Gates's crusading vision of the world. Ballmer looked at spreadsheets, competitor market share, and hardware sales.
Under his leadership, Microsoft stopped being a company on a passionate crusade to empower human potential and morphed into a massive defensive software company aggressively chasing quarterly numbers.
And the beautiful irony of that story is that Gates left Microsoft and started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he's doing the exact same thing, helping humans overcome obstacles to reach their potential.
He just swapped out software for philanthropy as his new what? The WHY never changed.
We see the exact same pattern of cultural erosion at Starbucks. Howard Schultz didn't technically found Starbucks, but he was the one who injected the profound WHY into the company in the 1980s.
His vision, inspired by the espresso bars of Italy, was to create the third space, a comfortable communal sanctuary between the stress of work and the responsibilities of home.
It was never just about the physical coffee beans. It was about the feeling of the space, the belief in community.
In the early days, if you told the barista you were going to sit and enjoy your coffee in the store, they would serve your espresso in a heavy ceramic cup and your pastry on a real ceramic plate.
The weight and feel of that cup was a tangible that perfectly proved the WHY of the third space. It made you feel grounded.
But as Starbucks scaled globally, executives realized that ceramic cups are expensive. They break, they require dishwashers and hot water.
So, chasing efficiency, they transitioned the entire operation to disposable paper cups. It saved them millions of dollars in operational costs.
But as the source material brilliantly points out, nothing says, "We appreciate your transaction, now please leave," quite like handing someone a paper cup.
By prioritizing operational efficiency over their founding belief, they subtly but powerfully eroded the trust of their early adopters. The WHY became fuzzy. The store started to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a fast food assembly line.
Fortunately, Schultz was still involved enough to recognize the cultural rot, and he eventually had to step back into the CEO role to forcefully right the ship, closing down stores for retraining and reminding the entire organization why they existed in the first place.
But it serves as a stark warning of how easily and quietly the split happens when we measure only the what and neglect the why.
This all brings to mind the old parable of the cathedral builders. Imagine three men working on a massive construction site. You ask the first man what he's doing, and he says, "I'm laying bricks." That's a what?
You ask the second man, and he says, "I'm building a wall." That's a HOW.
But you ask the third man, and he looks up at the sky and says, "I am building a cathedral." That is the why. The visionary architect designs the cathedral that reaches for the heavens, the engineers figure out the structural loads, and the workers place the bricks.
But if the architect leaves and fails to codify the vision, the workers eventually stop seeing the cathedral. The passion dies. They just become bricklayers, slapping mud on stone, watching the clock until 5 p.m.
That is the ultimate tragedy of unchecked success. In our relentless pursuit of growth, we become incredibly confident in what we do and how we do it, but we completely lose sight of why we embarked on the journey in the first place.
The split occurs when the tangible metrics separate from the intangible belief. The only way an organization can survive the departure of its founder is if that why has been so clearly extracted, codified, and woven into the culture that every new employee, from the boardroom to the cash register, can run their decisions through the celery test.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started by examining the toxic, exhausting reality of the commodity trap, the endless sugar rush of price cuts, rebates, and fear tactics that are literally making us sick.
We dove deep into the evolutionary biology of the brain, discovering that our most profound drivers of trust and loyalty live in the limbic system, a place completely devoid of language.
We moved into the practical application, learning that true authenticity requires balancing the clarity of why, the discipline of HIW, and the consistency of what.
We realized we have to walk through the supermarket of endless business advice and only purchase the celery and rice milk that actively proves our internal beliefs to the outside world.
We explored the sociological mechanics of the Law of Diffusion, realizing that trying to sell to the cynical middle of the bell curve is a fool's errand. True scale comes from finding the innovators and early adopters who already believe what you believe.
And finally, we confronted the terrifying reality of the split, the moment when a company's success drowns out its soul, leaving a loud megaphone with a fuzzy, uninspiring message.
The historical patterns are undeniable. Whether it is Apple fundamentally challenging the status quo of the tech industry, the Wright brothers risking their lives to take to the sky, or Martin Luther King Jr. drawing 250,000 people to a monument without a single digital invitation, the individuals and organizations who actually alter the course of human history all operate from the exact same playbook.
They operate from the inside out. They start with why.
If you are tired of competing on the exhausting, razor-thin margins of price and novelty, you absolutely must read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. We've spent an hour diving deep, but we have only scratched the surface of the historical case studies and the profound psychological frameworks he offers.
It is an absolute mandatory read for anyone who wants to truly lead, rather than simply manage.
If you found value in this deep dive, please subscribe to the Decode Deep Dive channel, drop us a comment below, and keep this intellectual conversation going. We want to know what your personal celery test looks like.
I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. In business and in life, we spend a massive amount of our finite energy agonizing over our competitors. We analyze their future sets, we track their pricing, we stress over their market share.
Right.
But what if the ultimate competitive advantage comes from completely ignoring your competition? If you truly deeply know your why, the only entity you're trying to outdo today is the version of yourself you were 6 months ago.
That is powerful.
As you look at your own work tomorrow morning, what is your why? And when you finally stand in the checkout line of your career, will your basket be full of authentic celery? Or will you realize you just survived on a transactional sugar high of M&Ms?
Because at the end of the day, you can point to the jagged white line on an X-ray to explain a broken arm. It is clean, it is rational, and it is easily measured. That is the what. But inspiration. Inspiration lives in the murky, unspoken, ancient waters of the limbic brain. It completely defies the X-ray. You cannot see it on a spreadsheet, but it is the only force powerful enough to actually change the world. See you next time.